So we're going to talk about thriving with ADHD in tech. I was recently diagnosed about 6 months ago, something along those lines. Might have been longer. Can't actually remember. Certainly within the last year. And I've been medicated for about 3 months, still working on that medication. So I'm going to give you an oversight of what it's like to have ADHD, strategies to combat some of the bits which are not awesome, and also as a manager, if you have or an ally. So if you have people you know with ADHD, maybe you think yourself has got ADHD. So some of these coping strategies might be useful to you. So hopefully we get something from it. So living with ADHD is double-edged. On the one hand, the thoughts run really, really fast, which is great because it can be innovative. And sometimes we have something called hyperfocus, where we just can pick a topic and run with it for hours and hours and hours and hours, forget to drink, forget to eat, forget to go to the toilet. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I need to do all those things. But though that hyperfocus can lead to like a coding marathon, that you get brilliant results. But on the other hand, to be real, it can really, really suck. As Sam says, fixed on the wrong thing can also be a problem. So when it's on the suck side, it's missing deadlines, it's derailing meetings because you've got something you want to say and you can't wait your turn, and it's a constant battle with distractions to sometimes make you question, like, do I have value to add here, because I'm so distracted. And so when it's bad, it's bad, but when it's good, it's great. So it's trying to help you do more of the good and less of the bad, but it's always going to be a 50-50 kind of situation. So we're going to dive into the raw reality of ADHD in tech, good, bad, chaotic, and we're going to explore how to navigate the challenges that make us want to pull our hair out, while also tapping into the unique strengths. But like I say, as an ally or manager, you can, if you know what those strengths are, you can play to them and help them come to the fore. So hopefully get some of that. So whether you yourself have ADHD, you're managing someone who is, or you're just trying to understand what's going on with your neurodiverse colleagues, maybe the question is, well, how come everybody's ADHD these days? What's going on? This talk is about finding real practical ways to not just survive, but thrive in the tech world. And the reason I chose this image on here is it's a mosaic. We're all different shapes and sizes. Whether you're neurodiverse, neurotypical, spectrum, anything, any flavor of different being, we're all different shapes, but we can all fit together. And it's not going to be a perfect fit, but a mosaic is a beautiful thing with all different shapes and sizes. So that's I do like the mosaic thing. I'm going to try and use that a lot as I talk about ADHD in future. So I want to go is the challenges of ADHD, because a lot of people say it's a superpower, which can be super frustrating, because when you're having a bad day, and I apologize, my language may be coarse, it's the way I tend to speak. I'll try to not be, but if I do, please forgive me. So the challenges of ADHD. This slide's got different shapes on it, just to say that your brain could be here, could be there. In the old days, makes me sound really old, but in 1970s, 1980s, ADHD was the naughty boy syndrome, where you were restless, you were fidgeting, disruptive, that kind of thing. We've moved on a long way from there. I think there's now, last time I checked, not something I check very often, there's something like 5 or 6 different types of ADHD, if you want to put it that way. So some people are disruptive and inattentive. That's type 1. You can see on the slide, I think it's the couple you can see. There's the hyperactivity. Now, most of these things describe men with ADHD. It completely doesn't describe women with ADHD. They present very, very differently, where they probably have more internal chaos going on rather than external chaos. So they are really unlikely to get diagnosed. 70s, 80s, 90s, it just wasn't going to happen because we weren't looking for those symptoms for a diagnosis kind of thing. Whereas the boys were, but again, only the ones which are being hyperactive or being disruptive. Just things, a symptom most people don't know is a really funny one. Most late stage diagnosis ADHD people will probably have been diagnosed with a hearing disorder. That's a really weird thing, and it's because one of the features can be cognitive processing. So you hear it, you don't necessarily. You need a second or two to process through what's been said. So it's really weird because people, if you've got the hyper super fast brain, how come sometimes your brain just is running through treacle and you take in a phrase or a word, and a very common thing you hear an ADHD person say is, what? What did you say? And then they'll respond to what you said, which can be really frustrating to the person talking to an ADHDer, because like, you did hear what I said. Why did you say her? Why you're always saying her or what? But you do hear what I say, and it can be really frustrating. So knowing that's a feature, that's a very understood feature. If you're speaking to your children, your sisters, brothers, colleagues, anybody, and you recognise that in them, then if you can have that conversation, like, okay, I get what's happening. I will wait just a little bit longer for a response, maybe. Or from the other side, the ADHDers can say, okay, this is what I heard. Now that can be funny because sometimes what you first process is not what they said. And that can lead to some very funny. If you can just say, "Oh, this is what I heard," like, no, we weren't talking about cats. We were talking about, I don't know, bins or something like that. Could be completely random, but for some reason the brain went there. So overall, whichever type of ADHD you've got, and like I say, there's 5 or 6. There's one called the Ring of Fire. That's it's because it's if you look at it, your brain in a MRI machine, different parts of your brain light up. So one of the types of ADHD is the Ring of Fire, and that's where basically everything's lit up, and that is super tough for the person who's got it, and super tough for everybody around them. I don't actually know anybody, but I've heard about how it just totally disruptive. So ADHD, unique set of challenges. It impacts productivity, relationships. So that's an interesting one. Relationships, people don't think about that. They think it's all about being distracted, etc., etc. But it can really impact where, family life and overall job satisfaction, because you'd be self-doubting. So by understanding these, we can address them better and develop strategies for success. So it's crucial to recognize that they're not personal failings, but aspects of neurodevelopmental differences that you can apply certain techniques to help you through. Just want to touch on that a little bit longer. Not personal failings. What is people who are being diagnosed with ADHD in their 30s, 40s, or 20s is still technically late, 20s, 30s, 40s. A counsellor. I was speaking to a counsellor the other day, not in a professional capacity, just having a chat about this talk coming up and things like that. And it was one of the, basically when they start to treat somebody who's been late diagnosed ADHD, the first few months is actually PTSD treatment, because you've been coping, you've been misunderstood, you blame yourself. Why can't I just finish this project? I've got a project, I need to get it finished. Why am I such a failure? Yeah, the self-talk is really bad. So most people late diagnosed are actually suffering PTSD, which is scary. But we can help. It's becoming much more aware. Everyone attending here is evidence of that. So I thank everybody who comes, whether it's a personal interest or a interest for any other reason. Thank you for coming. So I'm going to go over 5 key challenges of ADHD, and then we'll go over strategies. So time management, planning tasks, staying organized, meeting deadlines. There's 2 particular features, which is time perception and executive function. So time perception's a really interesting one, and so I've been watching videos because I've diagnosed lately. I've been watching videos, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, I find video is a very good format for consuming information, and then people sharing what they go through and ways they deal with it. And a really good one for me is if you've got 10 minutes to go, 10 minutes until you've got to go and get in a taxi or whatever, you've got 10 minutes. I process that as loads of time, 10 minutes. I can go and have a shower, I can do this, I can do that, I can get all that done. 10 minutes is ages. And I heard someone put it a different way. They went, it's 600 seconds. Now that does not sound like a long time. Bigger number, but 600 seconds, actually that's not long. I don't have time to do this and do that. So that's a nice trick I like. Portray it in seconds, not minutes. So 5 minutes to go, it's only 300 seconds. The fact that the 10 seconds it takes to say however long, that's 1% of that time gone. That goes really quickly. So difficulty with time management is a feature. I think I'm revealing some of the strategies at the same time as because I'm just so passionate about it. But I will provide this deck, and it is more structured. It's not like an ADHD person to be a little bit all over the place. Represent exactly how it is. So the next one is inconsistent performance. Oh yeah, just in case anyone sees it's 26 slides, don't panic. That is because this one slide, for example, is actually 5 slides for me because I've got notes on each slide. If I saw 26 slides, I think I might. It's going to be a long, boring meeting. Hopefully, it won't be. Right. So, second one, inconsistent performance. Really difficult in that if you ask me on a Monday or a Tuesday, doesn't matter, a day to do something, one time might smash it out of the park, get it done in hardly any time at all, have flair of creativity, and just output an awesome result. The next week, or another situation, I might not be able to do it at all. I might leave it to the very last minute. That's very frequent. I may just have no, I could barely get the basics done. But it's weird because it's completely inconsistent. That's very hard to manage because I know I'm capable of whatever. So then when you're in one of those days where you can't, the self-talk is horrendous because it's, you're stupid. Why can't you concentrate? Why can't you focus? People need you to do this. People are waiting on you. So inconsistent performance can be really, really challenging. Emotional dysregulation. The mood swings is it's described as mood swings, and I don't see it that way. You can be extremely irritable without it really feeling, the people around you are like, why is he so naggy? What's gone on? And it could just be that's what my brain's decided to do. It's just the way it is. I'm not genuinely upset with anybody. So that's why it's a good challenge. When I mentioned about family, although we'll get to it later as strategies, what I will say just as an overall for everything, talk, communicate, tell people how your brain works once you've figured it out, and that might take some time as well. Because whilst you may seem wildly angry or wildly upset, you can turn on a die and be, really, really upset, done, not upset anymore, completely fine, or really, really, really happy and then not, and that can throw people because that's not how they experience the same things. So emotional distress. There's one called rejection sensitive dysphoria is a feature, RSD. And I put it like, if you ever woken up with beer fear, you had a big night out, had a lot of drink, you maybe don't quite remember what's gone on, or maybe you do, but you wake up and you get that feeling where your heart drops into your stomach, or when you've truncated a table, or you started a transaction, walked away for an hour, if you just do database relation, you have that feeling of, that happens essentially all day, every day about anything. If there's no coffee in the canteen, as an example, you can get exactly the same feeling as if you've just been told that your favorite animal has been in an accident. It's really inconsistent that you can have exactly the same emotional response, which is again incredibly hard. We have difficulty with task initiation, so which is a really strange one again, because sometimes you can just jump on a task, get it done really easy, great. So this is the inconsistent performance. But actually getting started is a particularly known challenge for ADHDers. And it leads to frustration and underperformance. You start late, why am I going to bother putting, everyone else has had 5 days on this. I've had 1 day, so I'm just going to kind of phone it in. And it's kind of opposite to neurotypical. So the phrase I like actually isn't neuro diverse, it's neurospicy, because they both mean the same things. Like if you go to Nando's and you have all the different levels of spiciness, it's the same. So diversity, I mean, it covers the same word, same meaning. But I like neurospicy because sometimes I might be mild and sometimes I might be up in the fives. So it might be 3, might be 2. Where I think neurodiverse makes me feel anyway that person is a level 3, that person is a level 5, and that one person could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They might even go up to 10. Who knows? Everyone's different. So I prefer neurospicy. Also, I think it sounds cool. And so difficulty with task initiation. No, it's going to be weird because I'm going to talk about finishing a task, which isn't initiation, obviously. We're not, or ADHD don't tend to be rewarded with dopamine by finishing a project. So you hear people say, that feeling of relief when a project's done, or feeling of pride when a project is done. Most ADHDers I know, and I don't want to broad stroke on anybody. Everybody's different, but most of the people I know, they don't get that reward on completion. What they probably get more so is, well, I'm glad that's done. I can, it's one thing off my task list. It's not a reward so much. The reward is doing something new and exciting, which is why it can be really hard to finish a project. And difficulty with task initiation. I started this presentation weeks ago, but I'd say the most work was done 5 o'clock last night till 1 o'clock this morning, and then 6 o'clock this morning till 8 o'clock this morning. This should have been done weeks and weeks and weeks ago, and the majority of it was. I don't want to say I didn't prepare, but my focus to get it done, to get it good, didn't come to me till yesterday, which I predicted. I knew it was going to happen. If you looked at my LinkedIn post a few weeks ago, it's just one of those things, and you have to accept it. Don't hate yourself, and sometimes it comes off, sometimes it doesn't. Hopefully, if you do my feedback form at the end, we'll find out if this one did. And the fifth challenge, so this is the typical challenges, is working memory. Because you might remember, really weirdly, 10 years ago, I was in this shop and this statue was there and whatever. I have a really clear memory of that. So you've got great memory of really weird things or numbers. I remember that a certain height of a building, or just something that you remember. So whatever is interesting to you, you probably have a really great memory for that. But working memory is awful. What did I have for breakfast this morning? No idea. What did I do? That question on a Monday. What did you do over the weekend? I have no idea. Literally no idea. Someone else will tell me, like, oh yeah, I remember. But it's not in my memory to access. So it's kind of weird because it's a very good memory, but only if it's something you're interested in, which can be challenging. So following instructions, so impaired memory and concentration being the second piece. Following instructions and concentrating on a task can be really tough. I'll give a very specific way of handling that or improving that for yourself in a second. So we're going to move on to the strategies for overcoming those. So as we discussed in a previous slide, there's unique challenges, and tech industry in particular, which is focused on, it's a very fast-paced industry. But other industries are just as fast-paced, just in different ways. What I want to say is, with the right strategies and accommodations, it's totally possible to thrive and excel and not struggle as much, especially if everybody becomes more aware. So on this next slide, we're going to explore several key approaches that can help to overcome the obstacles we've just mentioned. They're not, just remember, these challenges are not insurmountable. That is, yeah, it's a big takeaway. These challenges are challenges, they're not stoppers. You can work around them, you can work through them, you can change them, you can turn them to your benefit sometimes. So hopefully some of these are stepping stones towards getting you to a better place, whether that's you or with your colleagues. Minimize distractions is a big one. A very ironic thing about ADHD is, and again, I use that in a very general term, we work much better in a non-cluttered environment, but quite often we are fully incapable of keeping an environment non-cluttered. It's a weird split. We work better. If my desk is clear and the area around me is clear, my mind is somehow clear and I work better. But over time, it just stuff appears, doom piles, paperwork that I need to deal with at some point just climbs and climbs and climbs. So a strategy is close unnecessary tabs in your browsers for a start, because you will flick between them if they're open, and if something pops, you're going to look at it, and then you might be gone for 5-10 minutes down a rabbit hole. You see Laura James feeling called out, sat in a clutter. Can't quite see that. Let me bring it up on my phone. In my neat clutter, there you go. Yeah, that can be very frustrating to family members where you put things in a pile. Now, for me, that's tidy because it's not spread everywhere. It's in a pile. There might be multiple piles, but that's tidy compared to it being everywhere. So definition of tidy is a little bit different as well. I have muted my notifications on here so that I don't get things popping up because they're distracting. So if you're on Windows, turn focus mode on. It can work really well. Obviously, if you're in a call like that Teams chat popped up, so if you're in a meeting, you do what you can essentially. Utilize website blockers. I saw a great video the other day, and it was actually an AI video about how to make software with AI. And he made a Chrome add-in, and every time he went on Twitter or X, this was a specific example, it actually blacked the screen out, put 2 buttons on in front, and said, "Do you want to continue and waste time? This is just your heads up. This is a time waster." Or actually, would you rather go look at your task list? And if you click on the task list, it took him over to Trello board. Which I thought was a really good idea. It's the difficult bit to understand for non-ADHDers of ADHD is we want to be productive. It's not that we want to not do the work or we want to be distracted. We really, really do want to succeed. We really, really do want to not let anyone down. But sometimes our brain just goes mad. But yeah, in terms of strategies, website blockers, great. Declutter your workspace if you can. Even if that means you end up in a smaller like a compact workspace where you can't really clutter it because there's nowhere to do that. That's a strategy if some people do. I don't personally like working in closed areas, but some people it does work. And the tabs are just for a funny bit. How many people know that if you go over 99 tabs in Chrome, it gives you a smiley face? Most non-ADHDers don't know that. Most ADHDers do know that. On their phone, on their laptop, on their desktop PC, you've got over the 100 and you just get a smiley face now. Chrome just laughs, goes, I don't know, more than 99. So close them down if you can. The next one is leveraging productivity tools. So I mentioned about time management being quite difficult, or time awareness being quite difficult. Set reminders. I have reminders that go off 4 or 5 times a day, and sometimes they're just simple. Stand up, go for a walk, have a drink of water. Dehydration is a very common thing because we just forget to drink. Or you drink so much you go to the toilet all the time. It's kind of 50-50. So to-do lists, it totally depends. Some ADHDers can really thrive with lists and others don't like lists at all. I was going to do this whole talk saying, "Oh, I love doing task lists," and that's not true. I don't. I wish I did. I wish it could be something. I've started many times to use time tracking software or task management software. This one doesn't work for me, but it does work for other people I know. A good friend of mine, she's more anxiety ADHD, and for her, it really works. She loves lists, and it helps her. She gets a little thrill every time she ticks a line off to say, "I've done that task." She actually does get that thrill. So even though I said earlier that we don't get that finishing a project dopamine, that's not everybody. That's, some do, some don't. Calendars, I get really confused. I double book all the time because I've got multiple calendars as a consultant. So find some way of merging your calendars together, because otherwise you get 5-minute warning, and actually you're supposed to be in 3 places at once, and you're going to have to let someone down. So yeah, try and have if you can, get a single calendar that combines all the others. Outlook's quite good at it for combining. You can see it in schedule view. Google, I think, has got a similar feature. Yeah, and just to mention that 10-minute in 600 seconds piece again. Time management, think about it in blocks of time. The Pomodoro technique works for a lot of people, but maybe slightly modified. I think Pomodoro is 25 minutes and then 5-minute break, I think. When I have tried Pomodoro, I tend to work better with a 35-minute. And that's for me a key message: flexibility. You're not going to see a thing that works for everybody. Try some, change them. If they work, great. If they don't work at all, maybe that's not one for you. But it's fine. Try something else. There are definitely features that will help you. The next one we've got is routine and structure. So consistent daily routines. I know some people who have a cold, like a plunge pool. They drop into a cold water and first thing in the morning, and that really helps them with ADHD features because they get a big dopamine rush, and apparently it helps them throughout the day. I've not tried that one myself. It's one I'm looking to try. Break large projects into smaller tasks. So I think that's part of the task initiation piece. If you've got a massive project, it's really daunting, and you just don't start any of it, break it down. Break it into, so if you use DevOps or Kanban board or whatever, breaking things into smaller pieces can be really good because you can get momentum and get going. Use time blocking techniques. So this does work for me reasonably well, where it's not necessarily a time management app. It's literally appointments in my calendar, which no one else can see because they're set to they're not set to busy, they're set to available, but I can see them. And it'll be, I am going to focus on this project or this client or this task, whatever, for the next 2 hours. What that's most useful for, weirdly, is not the focusing on that particular item. It's not doing the other stuff. So I love going on LinkedIn. It's my social media channels. I'm on it all the time. Having a block which is not for LinkedIn, when I know there is a LinkedIn block coming up later on, helps me not go on it. So time blocking, it's actually sometimes a preventative. And I would say set regular check-in points. If you've got a long project, which is, say it's a 3-week, 4-week sprint, you're on a project doing something, make sure if you have your daily stand-ups, great. If you don't have that, implement something where you are checking in, because all that will happen is typically you'll get towards the end of the project and try and do 4 weeks of work in a week or a day. If you've got those regular check-ins, that can just help you to be making progress as time goes along. And then we're going to talk about the communication piece I mentioned earlier. Let people know your ways of working. If they can work with it, great. If they can't, at least they're aware of it, and you find the happy middle ground possibly. What I hear a lot in schools with ADHD kids is, the deadline for everybody is Monday, but we'll give the ADHD kid an extra week. Now, really, that's the wrong thing to do. You need to go the other way. Shorten the deadline so that when they panic on, let's say everybody has to get it in for Friday. set the ADHD kid or person or yourself, whatever, a Wednesday deadline. And then if they do miss it and, they need to do work the next day, they still got 2 days, 3 days till the real deadline. And if that works for you, share that strategy with your manager, for example. So actually, if you give me a shorter deadline, then you really have, that will help me to get it in when we really need it, if that's something that works for you. Ask for accommodations when needed. So what I've got a lot out of recently is if I have a phone call, I'm arranging car insurance or anything which is on a phone, basically, but I'm trying to do something. I will happily share, look, I've got ADHD. I would do better in this situation if you can send it to me in writing. And if I can read it, that is far better for me. We can still talk about it together in this call, but can you send me what you're reading and we'll read it together? And yeah, that really works for me, to be able to read it. But that does require you to be quite open about it, which I hope everyone feels comfortable. And if not, we're moving towards that at least. There you go. And cultivate accountability. So it's part of the communication challenge. Is quite often a good strategy is partnering with somebody, like an accountability buddy is a phrase, where you jump on a call together and they'll just ask, it could be somebody not in the workforce or not in your team or a friend, it could be anybody, a parent, literally could be anybody. And the conversation is just, what are you supposed to be getting done this week? How are you getting on with it? Having to relay something to people. Now, it's a weird one because it does put stress on you to get it done because you don't want to let that person down. But as long as you're comfortable with that stress itself isn't a problem. It's if it's negative stress, I would say, is a problem. So if you are comfortable putting stress on yourself, an accountability buddy is really good because it just means you get things done without the overhead stress of it's being your manager or your client or whoever. It's an impartial person and they're not judging you. They're just asking how you're getting on. Set clear goals with specific deadlines. Very difficult if you, we need this improvement to this Power BI report sometime in the next couple of weeks. Well, in that case, it's going to get done in a few weeks. Be more, try and set yourself clear goals and ask your manager to do the same. And use visual progress trackers. I find that really useful. Visual progress. So so on this slide deck or on a slide deck I've done before, I put however many slides there are, that many dots at the bottom of the screen. So then as I'm clicking through, I can see I'm progressing through and, I've got a better idea of where I'm at. Because where I'm at now is 13 slides to go with 12 minutes. So that's going to be interesting. We'll see. So before we go on to the next, I just want to say everything we said before, use what works for you. And keep looking. There's loads of resources online to help. So we're going to embrace the strengths because we've talked to them as challenges, and they are, but they're also strengths. So exceptional problem-solving abilities. We can think outside the box. We can approach things from a completely unique perspective, and the innovation that is possible is, sometimes it will take weeks for this idea to come up, whereas ADHD might get it in a day or an hour or spark of genius 1 second. It's one of those things. We identify patterns and connections really quickly. So that can, if you can leverage that, if you recognize a pattern, communicate that. Sometimes people might think you're crazy, and that's where there's a trust element over time where your gut feeling about something is because you can recognize patterns. If it comes to be true and you've communicated it, people will look at you less like you're crazy when you say this really random weird thing, which turns out to be true. Obviously that's can go if you're on a real crazy moment, and I don't like using the word crazy, especially talking about neurodiversity. I mean crazy in the just the phrase. Okay. really thrive in brainstorming sessions. If you're trying to think of a new project or a solution to a problem, brainstorming where you just have the opportunity to throw out ideas. You can throw out 10 ideas, one might be the one that sticks. Whereas someone else might throw out one and it's a good one, you might throw out 10, 9 are rubbish, one's great. So it's being comfortable with, actually, I'm just going to throw all these ideas out. It's okay to dismiss them if you don't think there's any value in them, but at least hear them because it might trigger something. And we excel at troubleshooting complex issues. So sometimes you can get a whole problem in your mind and you literally be looking up and left and right, which is a really weird thing to do because I'm not looking at anything, but it's the way I process. If I've got a really complicated thing to think of, I'll be looking up and around because it's all in my brain. So embrace that strength. If it's something you're good at, then try and make that a part of your day-to-day role. I don't know why it did that. That's weird. Heightened creativity, the imagination. It's problem solving was the first one. I mentioned innovation. Really, that should have been under here. The creativity is really valuable. It brings spontaneity sometimes. If you've been in a company for everyone's been in the same company for 15 years, they all end up thinking the same way and coming up with the same solutions. ADHD is sometimes a benefit for them is they don't fall into that and they might still be able to bring up innovation. So if that's something you can embrace, you should do it. If I've got time, I'll give you an example of that later on. Hyperfocus is an amazing strength. It's also a huge problem, but it's an amazing strength. If you're focused, you can keep going and push through far harder and longer than you would think because you just forget time. Embrace that. So if you set yourself up for that, if you have a deadline, because the worst thing about if you break a hyperfocus, it's very hard to get back into. So if you have got your things popping up and notifying you, that can break your hyperfocus. So that's definitely one of the ones. Make sure you're in focus mode. Even possibly turn off your internet if you are working on a problem you can solve locally on your machine. Turn off your internet. Sound isolating headphones can be really useful. Things like that. And you can become a subject matter expert really quickly. So great for consultants sometimes, where you can drop into a new client, new role, hyper focus, and really get to know the in-depth bits and pieces really quickly. So it's a massive strength. If you can embrace it, do so. Adaptability and resilience, same thing we just said with dropping into a new client, or adaptability and resilience. I knew I was doing this talk today. It's also my son's 13th birthday yesterday, who loves car racing. So we are at a race park, not your traditional place to be doing a presentation, but just adapt. I knew in advance. I've got my phone fully charged, so I've got signal in case the Wi-Fi is not really good, which it isn't, and resilience. So if my signal wasn't any good, I'd have figured something out. I'd have gone to the office and maybe asked to use their office. People, if you ask people for help, they will give it to you quite often if they can. If it's within their power, they will help you. And yeah, so the ability to pivot, again, double-edged. When you're pivoting left, right, that's not always the greatest. But sometimes you need to pivot because a new problem's come up. That's the strength of ADHD. Embrace it. So the point of this is to try and be not everything is, all of these things could be described as negatives, and we did earlier, but also for self-talk and for improving relations, look at them as strengths in some cases. And the next one is creating an inclusive environment, and that is being openly communicate with your colleagues about how you work best. Now, you're not always going to get to do that. You have to work within a team. The mosaic is everyone together. It's not the one in the middle, everyone around. But being open and communicate can really help with everybody supporting each other. Everyone's got a right to a different way of thinking. Okay. So And here's an example of a bit of weirdness. I found this. Oh, I made this slide. That image I found. I loved it. Didn't fit with a slide deck, but I left it in because I like it, and therefore I want. Look, that's a picture you like. When I share this slide deck, copy it, paste it, leave it in. Don't double think yourself all the time. Don't take out all the things that might be really good and no one else has thought of. There we go. Justin saying we have a lighting session, no room after, so there's no need to rush. Cool, thank you. I got 5 slides left anyway, so it's not too bad. And then we can do Q&A if anyone wants to do that afterwards. So some tips for the managers out there. Now, you may have ADHD yourself, but you might still have to manage other ADHDers, and we're all different. So hopefully we've covered some differences that you might be able to think of. But overall, it requires understanding flexibility and focus on strengths. By implementing some of the strategies we've discussed, managers and team leaders and colleagues, we can create an environment where everybody thrives regardless of their way of thinking. There's a place for everybody, and if you can set up a team like that, you'll get better productivity, creativity, job satisfaction, just a better place to be by enabling everybody to work together. So if there's 5, you see there's 5 on a lot of these slides. There's one of oddities that I like: 5, 10, and even numbers. So the car radio has to be on an even number. A 5 is acceptable, but never a 3 or a 7. That's just not happening. But that's not ADHD. That's some other weirdness. And that's the difficulty, is a lot of overlapping, just logic. There's a lot of overlapping differences. They're not all going to be ADHD, but it doesn't mean some of the strategies aren't going to work. So if someone comes to you and you recognize their behaviors to you look like ADHD, but they don't self-recognize that, doesn't mean you can't try to use the same strategies. Some will work, some won't. And it works for, literally anybody. So hopefully you got more awareness of different ways of thinking. As a manager, all the great managers I've worked with, they have been able to adapt their management style for the individual. So hopefully with some of this understanding of ADHD behaviors, it might help. Be patient, particularly with time management issues. Understand that things might get done at the last minute. The alternative, sometimes people do things really early, but then they keep iterating, and that can be frustrating. It'd be, actually, I asked for this project, you've given me the project 10 times, because we were so scared of missing the deadline that we did the work and then iteratively made it better. If you're comfortable with that, that works really well for everybody. If you're not, again, communication. Right, here we go. So leverage the strengths of your team, yourself and your team. Put them in situations where they can use their differences as a strength. So whether that's hyperfocus for a really complex project, giving them the time to get into a hyperfocus mode, and that's not really how it works, but give them the space rather than time, I would say. Don't have 5 projects going on at the same time if you're not happy that actually 4 of them might not get looked at. So if someone goes into a hyperfocus, the other stuff's just going to go away. So be careful with that. Encourage out of the box thinking, reward it. I mean, even if it's not the winner in every chat, if they feel comfortable to give that out of the box thinking, you might get some real wisdom or just sparks of really good stuff. But if you've, and I say you, I don't mean this personally, if that person's creativity has been stifled for 20, 30 years, that could be tough. So sometimes you have to work it out of people. And if you can spot that your team member is in a high energy period, move things around. Give them, there's 5 things that need doing. Oh, James is buzzing today. Right, let's do this task today because that's the one that requires energy, rather than doing that task on Wednesday because that's when it was scheduled, but Wednesday might be a low energy day. If you can move things, move things. There we go. So communicate clearly. Set very something ADHD is. I have heard say they struggle with a lot. I do, but not to a massive extent. Some people say it's a really big problem for them. Is understanding the nuances, the unspoken nuances. So I had one where the workplace was a 360 feedback. You know, we can give feedback up, we give feedback down, positive, negative. Tell people, you know, that was a great interaction, that was a negative interaction. I took them at their word. Someone didn't do a great job, so I gave a nice little bit of feedback. Tried to keep it pleasant. Just as you know, so just so you know, this wasn't great. Yeah, it turns out that was an unspoken thing. Everyone says they do 360. That really means everyone pats each other on the back. But that wasn't. I didn't get that. I didn't get that communication because it was an unspoken one. So if you're a manager and you've got people who maybe miss that nuance, explain it in very, very clear. Don't leave things to interpretation. Okay. Break if you've got a large project, break it down. If your team members aren't able to do that for themselves, and you've recognised that, you know, worked with them, break it down for them. Give them smaller projects. Set clear deadlines, and give regular feedback. It's I think of it like I think the so I'm getting distracted now. Waterfall versus agile. Agile is great because you get feedback quite often and you can change course. Even if it's not the greatest feedback, that's fine because we can learn from that and change. Better than going all the way through a project and have the fear that you've not delivered. If you've had regular check-ins, you can take pressure off yourself because you know where you're going. So if you're a manager, give that to your team members if you can. 2 more slides. Flexible schedules. Times the days of 9 to 5 are more or less over. I mean, in my life, they're over. Like I said, I told you the time I was working last night and this morning. If you are comfortable and can do that, certain environments, certain regulatory bodies, etc. I know that's not possible. If you can, be flexible. Maybe let people start at 10, finish at 6, or start at 7 in the morning, finish at 3, whatever worked best. Remote work options have been a godsend for me. This is about flexible schedules, but I want to say it before I forget it. Don't force people to have their cameras on. That's a real. I've been in meetings with 50 people and everybody has to have their camera on, and no one can see each other anyway. But what you are doing is making at least 2 people in that group really uncomfortable because they don't want to be on screen. Allow screens to be off. It's under flexibility rather than schedule, but yeah, you get the point. Doctor's appointments, therapy sessions, schools, being flexible stops that person stressing if they have to. Because what can happen is they'll lie. If you make it an issue they're not allowed to go to the doctor's appointment, then they just won't tell you. Some people. So be honest. Again, communication. I mentioned this lots of times. And the last one, distractions. If you're the manager, they should be self-managing, or not should be. They can self-manage, but if they're unable to, you can help. You can, if there's a meeting everyone has to go to, but that person really has no business being there, hopefully you can say you don't need to come. Or if they're in the middle of a hyperfocus, hopefully your environment, your cultural, your work culture is comfortable enough to go, right, we're not going to bring James into this. He's absolutely smashing the project at the moment. We'll have the meeting, relay back to him what was discussed. If that's feasible, that's a great one. And consider doing do not disturb. So block bits of time in the calendar that nobody is to book, like meeting free Friday as an example is one of those. But there we go. And that actually is me. I'm done.